Welcome to Satsunami. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Satsunami. My name's Satsunami and joining me for today's episode is none other than the one and only Mama D herself. It is the Petals of Support podcast. Mama D, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I was so excited after we figured out the whole time zone thing. I'm like, this is going to be great.
Do you know, that is the worst part of arranging these interviews.
Yes, it is. I had someone on from Australia. In Australia, from where I am, it's 12 hours, which or something. It was close where it wasn't that difficult, but she was kind of a day ahead because we recorded on Friday night my time. And she's like, it's Saturday afternoon. I'm like, how does that that makes no sense to me. So you were kind of like, well, this one is just hours, but it's figuring out. It's not easy to do.
Oh no, I totally know what you mean. I'm having flashbacks to an interview I did with an Australian creator, and it was a fantastic interview. It was a fantastic chat and everything, but see, trying to arrange it, she had to get up early in the morning, I had to stay up late, we had to pull the planets in line to get it to work and everything. I was like, oh, please let it work, and eventually it did, fortunately, but I know what you mean. Time zones are absolutely terrible, especially when you see creators on Twitter and you're like, they seem like really nice people. I really want to reach out to them. And then you see their time zone and you're like, should I not?
Yes. It's hard. It's hard because we all have at least for me, this is just a small part of my life. So it's having to explain to somebody that, yeah, I really, really want to have you on my podcast, or I really want to be a guest, but this is when my kids have every sport possible. And this is when I make dinner. And this is when I do this. So I have this window. And then the other person's like, oh, well, that's 4 a.m. my time. And I'm like, no, that's not going to work. So it's not easy because I want to get to know different people, but I kind of wish it's like, well, geez, can't you just come here or fly me out there and we could do this and it would be a lot easier. Plus I get a trip out of it.
Exactly. That would be the dream, wouldn't it? Just having like a
Yes.
podcast Comic-Con type thing. They do have them, don't they? I didn't just make that up, did I?
No, you know what they do, but or at least they have them around in the States. But I've looked once because now, I do this anonymously. So it's like I couldn't really go and be me, but I could go and check out other people and like check out equipment. It'd be really cool. But they seem to be in big cities. So like I saw one down in Orlando, Florida, which is not close to me, but there was nothing around me. And I'm like, gosh, these podcasts are a big deal. You would think they would have at least more often where maybe it was closer to people that I could go to one and meet people or network or something just under I'd have to wear a mask, but under my anonymous name.
Well, you could just walk around leaving your business cards.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of networking. It'd be nice. I like to meet the different people and hear the different stories and all of that stuff. So it'd be very cool. But no, you didn't make it up. I have seen it on the Google that they exist. So,
And if it's on the internet, it is true, as we've
it
been
has
told.
to be. Yes.
But yeah, I think it's similar here because the closest one I remember seeing was, at least in the UK, was in London. And by the sound of my accent, you'll probably realise I'm nowhere near London.
Uh-huh.
Just a tad.
Just a little bit.
I mean, I was there a couple of months ago, unrelated, not because of podcasting or anything, but yeah, having to travel from all the way here to London would be not a massive feat, but it would still be enough for me to go out my way to have to go down. But as far as I know, there's none up in Scotland. But if there's any Scottish podcasters listening out there being like, oh, there is, please, for the love of God, let me know.
Yeah, I have a UK question because what I love is that when people live in the UK and all around there, they seem to know more than one language and they seem to travel a lot more than I feel that we do in the United States. I speak English. I can recognize a few others, but I don't speak fluently. Like you could not take me somewhere where they speak Spanish and expect much from me. I can read French, but that's about what you're going to get. But I feel like when I talk to people who are in the UK, they speak several languages. and I think they travel more. Is that something that happens? I mean, I kind of picture almost like a train. Isn't there like a train system that you can travel around and take holidays, or not really?
Well, the train system, and this is where I get a wee bit spicy and controversial here. The
Oh, okay.
train system, well, for legal reasons, that's a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do have a relatively good train system. What I will say is good for getting to the major cities in the UK.
Okay.
It's not perfect because recently there's been pay disputes and things between drivers and the government. There's been a lot of strikes recently. Hopefully by the time this episode comes out, I mean, especially at the start of the year, it was just absolutely terrible. Like you couldn't get a train because of it. But, other than that, the train system, when they work, the train system takes you to where you want to go. But as for the language thing, I feel as if it's a bit of a mix because a lot of British people have a sort of stereotype. Usually for me, I would say Europeans are more likely. And when I say Europeans, I know technically I'm European, but
Yeah.
mainland Europeans, countries in Scandinavia or France, Germany, Spain, they are probably more likely to be bilingual than
Okay.
someone in the UK because we do learn a language in secondary school, so about ages 12 to 18, give or take, but it's more of a secondary subject, so you don't have to continue it if you don't want to. But I learned a bit of French, so I know bits and pieces, and I have to say, although I'm saying, oh no, British people don't speak a second language, I do love learning languages just as a kind of side hobby. I'm not saying I'm good at it, but I give it a go. I give it a modest go and cross my fingers because the amount of tourists that I've seen, particularly ones from down south, and I apologise to all my English listeners out there, but there's a particular place in Spain. I don't know if you've heard of Benidorm.
Mm-mm, no.
So it's like a city in Spain that unofficially might as well be a British colony at this point. The amount of British tourists that go there and they settle down, and it's like, when you go to a country and you want to have the experience of that country, you want to see how people live over there, you want to hear the language, you want to hear the cultural things, and then you go to Benidorm, and 9 times out of 10, you've got a middle-aged guy with his belly out, wearing Union Jack trousers, or Union Jack shorts rather, and you're like, Spain
Uh-huh.
sure has changed.
Not what I expected.
I mean, it's a beautiful country, but when you go to that area, I think even the Spanish are kind of sick of it. And you're like, yeah, I can understand. But yeah, it's a bit of a mix though, because what I was surprised at, kind of flipping it back to you, was and I have to admit, I've only done this once. It wasn't because I disliked America, but it's just because I was over once. And what I was surprised at was how they do try to promote bilingualism, especially in terms of Spanish and English and signs and things, because I know obviously America shares a border with South America.
I think it would depend on where you go because the state I'm in is not down south. We see Spanish on nothing. Everything is in English, but I completely agree. If you go more south, you do see the signs that maybe are in more than one language. Now, if you were to go to like a tourist attraction, we have a big Air Force base near where I live, and they have a big Air Force museum, and they have signs in every language there because it's a touristy thing that you never know who might come visit and everything. But when it comes to, like when I go into a restaurant, when I'm driving anything, everything is in English. So if I want to practice another language, it's on my own. I'm going to have to do that studying myself. I can't even test myself if I go out and say, okay, what does that sign say in English? But it's in French. Let me translate it. I don't have that. I would do it all on my own. I wish we have it same as you said, where it's high school here is when they offer, and they do require 2 years of a foreign language. And where my kids and where I grew up, it's French and Spanish. Those are the two options we have. Then if you were to go to college, they usually offer, or they require another couple years. And that's just kind of to have that broad liberal arts education. But if you just want to take 2 years of one and 2 years of another, that and not really give it much effort, you can do that. They don't really encourage it as much as I wish they did.
Because I think over here, although Spanish is definitely becoming more prolific, even when I was leaving school, and goodness, that was a good couple to protect my age, I'm going to say it was a couple of years ago.
That's what I say too. I'm like, I graduated 3 years ago. I don't know what y'all are talking about. But
It's when you think about it, you're like, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh God, I'm getting into double digits here. I better
yeah.
stop for my own sanity here.
Yep, yep.
But I remember when I was in school, we did French and German. Those were the two languages. But when we were in primary school, so that was about ages 5 to 11, they just put you in random classes. They were like, okay, this half go to French, this half go to German. And I suppose it would make more sense for us to learn German because it seems a lot more close to English than something like French because, you know, how it's a Romance language and everything. But I remember towards the end of school, they were definitely bringing in Spanish classes a lot more, and they seemed to be phasing it out. And I remember one time I had to work in the school for a short period, and we were taught a number of topics, including how to teach kids modern languages. And I always remember the tutor at the time was like, oh, right, it's okay. These schools don't really teach German, so all you'll need to know is the basics in French and Spanish. So I was like, perfecto, you know, absolutely fantastic. And don't get me wrong, my Spanish is far better than it used to be, but I was like, right, okay, that's fair enough. I'm ready to fight, you know. I've got my French going, I've got my Spanish going. Walk into the classroom, and what have they got covered on the walls? German.
Oh.
I just looked around and I just said, shiza, to myself. I was like, I can't believe that they would bring in German of all things, because German is one of those languages I have never touched in my life.
Neither have I, no.
It's one of those languages that it's like, it's not because I dislike it or anything. It's the same with Korean, because my partner and I really got into a lot of the K-dramas and everything. So you pick up odd words here and there, but it's one of those languages that I've never touched. But yeah, you hear it all the time. You're like, huh, this might be interesting. I'm like, no, you've got to focus on these ones.
There are so many out there. My oldest, he's in college. He's going to be a junior this year. And all of a sudden he's like, you know what? I'm going to take Chinese. And I thought, what the heck not? You know, I mean, you have to have a language. And even though you took Spanish and French in high school, why not just pick a totally different one? Who needs to, stick with anything? But he loves it. He has taken quite a few semesters of it. He is now tutoring students in it, but he did not feel that passion with Spanish and French. He took it because he had to. And I can't say that I ever felt like he didn't put a lot of effort into it. Yeah, that's all on him. But I don't think he enjoyed it, where for some reason he loves Chinese. And it's going to be one of his minors. And then because he's doing it, he can do like international business. And I'm amazed at how quickly he's picking it up. And I think kind of goes to show sometimes you need to think out of the box, where if you have an interest in something, like he's like, I want to take Chinese, do it. Because you might really find a passion for it and you might really be good at it, where if you didn't try, you'd never know. So everything in my house, he realized that to practice over the summer, he needed to keep looking at the characters. And I'm not even going to begin to pretend I understand what he's doing because it is a difficult language. So he has labeled everything in my house. So, you go walking by a light switch and he has labeled it. And he, does all this stuff just to keep it in his mind. And I'm like, you really are putting forth such an effort because you enjoy it. And I think that's pretty cool. I also think he yells things at us that probably are not really appropriate, but we can't do anything because we don't know what he's talking about. And I'm like, I can't call your brother that. I don't know what it means, but I have a feeling it's not good. But that's okay. Just keep practicing.
I mean, as someone who's also learning Mandarin Chinese, it is not an easy language to learn. It is really difficult, but it is amazing once you get that breakthrough. I feel as if Mandarin, despite the whole no alphabet thing, which I agree, it's baffling when you're like,
It is.
oh, what are we going to learn today? And it's like, the alphabet? Really? Nah.
No.
Here's 5,000 characters. Enjoy. You've got all these radicals. To me, it almost feels, in terms of grammar anyway, it always felt like this is going to sound such a weird thing to say, but like a Lego language. language where you can easily slot the verbs together, the grammar together, the tense and things. It all falls into place. I bet you there's someone listening to this being like, oh, it seems so wonderful when he say some bits, yeah.
What I think was interesting is, he came home at first semester and he's, learning all this. And I said, I think I used the word cat. And I'm like, well, how do you write cat? And he did one character. And, in English, it's CAT. You spell it. And so he's trying to explain to me how he was doing some other words. And he's like, well, if I do it in this order, it means one thing. If I do it, and he was trying to show me, but he can see it. And I guess that's kind of the thing, is that he loves it so much. He can see it, where I'm looking at going, I don't know what that means. And, he'll write it somewhere else. I'm like, I still don't know what it means. Like, I support you 100%, but I don't know. This is a hard language to learn, but it is so fun when somebody finds something that they like that. I think it's neat. And if you ever want to practice your Mandarin, there you go. I will hook you up. He's got the characters on his phone, and you guys can text each other.
Oh, I might have to take you up on that one day.
He really, it's funny. He is really good friends with the professor because, again, this is not a huge college, but he started out in a class. There was probably 20 of them taking Chinese, and now they've whittled down to 4. There's 4 of them. And so they have obviously become very close, and the professor is very close with them. She takes them out to restaurants and makes them do everything in Chinese. And it's very immersive, which is really cool, but they all text each other. And I think, that's what you have to do, is that you have to just keep, immersing yourself in it. It's not the same as something else where you can pick up little bits at a time the more you practice. So yeah, if you would like to, if you want to use the texting keyboard or whatever that is on his phone, he goes to town, and then I sit there, I'm like, I don't know what you could be telling anything and none of us would know what's going on. So you figured it out.
I know exactly what you mean, though, in terms of immersing yourself, because one of the things I did, I'm actually wondering if you do the same thing for French as well, where you'll watch a show in a particular language, which can be a blessing and a curse, because for me, when I started Spanish, I watched a show called Money Heist, or La Casa de Papel, as it's known, and it's like a Spanish bank robbing show, which is a fantastic show. It's on Netflix. I would highly recommend it. But on the flip side, it makes me sound like I'm a Spanish robber whenever I speak. And I was like, okay, maybe I should tone it down and try something else. So then I'll put on like a telenovela. Either I'm being very dramatic South American, or I'm a Spanish bank robber. Okay, let me try a Chinese drama. And the Chinese dramas are usually I go for things that are quite light-hearted, that have a lot of easy grammar and vocabulary. But because of that, I usually target shows that are romance dramas or things like that. So again, I'm speaking like that. And of course, my partner's saying, you're saying that wrong, what are you doing? And I'm like, look, I'm trying, okay?
I like all the dramatic hand movements you're doing too.
Exactly.
It's just, you are in the moment there.
I mean, to be fair, you can't ask for directions without doing the dramatic hand movement.
No.
It's like a dance in itself.
Just wanted you to order at the restaurant. What are you doing over there?
I don't know if you've seen those videos, but there are so many videos like that where you'll see this foreign guy that goes into either some kind of Asian restaurant, usually it's a Chinese restaurant, and you'll go to order and the title will be "White Man Speaks Perfect Chinese, blows away the staff," and you're like, what? As far as I know anyway, there's no videos of other people coming over saying, person orders McDonald's in fluent English, and everyone's like, wow, your English is so good. Because, I have to say, Chinese is one of those languages that I remember, because I learned it, I went over there. And,
okay.
It was a fantastic experience. This was all, of course, pre-2020, but it was absolutely fantastic. And I always remember saying hello to people. So to say hello, you'd say, ni hao. And that's all I would say. I wouldn't say anything more than that. And then they would turn around and be like, wow, your Chinese is so good. So they'd be like, wow, 你的中文很好.
You're like, no.
I'm like, no, 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 no. Let's dial that back a bit. And then they'd start speaking in fluent Mandarin. I'd be like, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't understand. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Whereas I feel as if it's the opposite in Europe, where it's like you'll try and say something. So, like, if you're in Spain, for example, you'll be like, perdóname, ¿dónde es? And you're like, just as you're about to finish that, they'll go, nah, it's over there. You'll be like, thank you.
Don't even try.
I know at this rate, we should start a language podcast.
We should. We should. Well, it's funny because over time I can read. That was always what I enjoyed. So I can read French quite well still now. And I was in French 4. And I don't know, we had to do some sort of project, and other people, as I've gotten older, I've gotten better with the public speaking. But the idea of in high school doing it just made me, my stomach, I could not handle it. So I convinced the teacher that I would read Les Mis totally in French. And I did it. And I think my motivation was, if I can do this, I don't have to stand up in front of this class. So that's where I think I got the comprehension down so well. But if you ask me to speak it, because I kind of slid past that all the time, I'm not the best at it. And of course, it's been 3 years since I graduated. So, I've lost it over that time, but I figure I can at least still read it. And it's the same with Spanish. I can read it, but the speaking was never, I think it's because I get in my head so much anyway. So then I start second guessing myself and I worry, am I saying it right? Where I was like, can I write it? If I can write it for you, then we're all good to go. If I can read it to you, but they're hard to practice unless, you can immerse yourself in it. That would be nice.
But I think as well, it's a Russian roulette, isn't it, when you do talk to native speakers? Because there's some I've met that I've made friends with, and they're absolutely lovely people. They'll help you out. They'll say, no, this is how you say it, and oh, you should say it because of XYZ. And I'm like, that is perfect, thank you so much. But then you get the nasty natives who are like, no, that is wrong, do it again, or no, you should do this, and they're very blunt. And I know some people like that type of learning, but for me personally, it's very demoralising, where you think you've said something perfectly and then they're like, nah, you've done it wrong.
Well, you speak of those videos, and I've seen those ones where they're making fun of somebody, and what they're forgetting is that, if you come over to America and English is not your first language, but you're trying, why would we make fun of somebody who's trying? I think that's so commendable, and you want to help them along. I want to give them a chance. My youngest, his friend's mom is from Russia, and she's been here for quite a few years, but her English is still not wonderful. And she'll call me because she'll say, I need to ask somebody for this, or I want to use the right words. And she feels comfortable with me. And I think I'm glad I'm somebody she can call for that. But I think, goodness, you should just go out and try. It saddens me that people laugh at her or make her feel bad because she doesn't speak perfect English. Well, I'm pretty sure she could kick all her butts at Russian. Let's all learn from each other. It's not something to make fun of somebody because they're trying. We're never going to be perfect, but boy, we can get better if we just keep practicing. And that's what we're supposed to do, and support each other.
Because that's something that I have to admit really gets me down. Whenever I hear somebody say, oh, I want it kind of irks me when they say they want a British accent, because there's not really such a thing technically. It's like when they say British accent, they mean very posh, received pronunciation English, London. It's like they don't want my accent, for example, or they
Right.
don't want Glaswegian, they don't want Welsh. Oh no, they want this English accent. And it always makes me quite sad in a way, because you see these people who have absolutely mastered the language, they're fantastic at English, yet they hate their accents because they always say, oh, I don't like this accent, I want to have a very neutral accent. And I think, but why though? Because it's absolutely fantastic that you have gone out of your way to learn this language, you have completely embraced another culture, and for people to turn around, they're like very hateful, spiteful people, obviously, to turn around and be like, haha, you speak funny. How about you learn another language first before, you start criticising these people? It is a shame that you still get people that either refuse to learn another language, or they decide that because another language sounds different, that they won't embrace it the same. It's just such a shame to see, because, I mean, personally for me, I've had so many experiences thanks to learning another language. So yeah, once you learn Spanish and Mandarin, that's it. You can't go back.
Yeah.
It's a door that's opened. I can't go back through.
Well, and it's great. I mean, find that, and if it's not those, I mean, find a language that interests you. And then maybe after you learn that, it'll open a door. Then you kind of get a desire to learn different ones. And who knows? It's fun to be able to read something not in English for me, or to hear a conversation and be like, wow, I don't 100% know what they're saying, but I can piece it together well enough. Or if you're my oldest, you can tell off your younger brother and no one knows what you're saying. And we're all like, well, seemed angry and not polite, but I can't really yell at him because I don't know what he said. But
I'll allow it. I'll just allow
yeah,
for now.
yeah, we'll just shrug that one off. So
And the amazing thing about language learning as well is just purely the fact that you don't have to go, as you said, for one of these big languages, because there's hundreds of languages out there that you can choose depending on what you're interested in. You know, you could learn, for example, and I'm not saying a minute amount of people do know these languages, but you know, you could learn Swedish or Maltese or things like that, even for a language like Esperanto, which is, have you heard of Esperanto? Sorry.
no, I haven't. No.
So it's like, and all the Esperanto listeners will be perking up their ears going, what the heck is
Yeah.
that? It's like a constructed language that was made in the late 1800s in Poland. And it takes all of these words from different European languages, like from German, from English, from French, Spanish, and it mashes it all together into what was supposed to be more of a auxiliary language.
Oh, how neat.
But because of the obvious two main things that happened during the 20th century, it was pushed back. Although not a lot of people speak it, like there are huge communities, both online and in person, that do speak it, and they've grown their small community with one another. I do think that's fantastic, that even though this is a constructed language, this is a completely made up language, people still gravitate towards it, and they still build this sense of community. People travel with it, people use it to learn other languages, they use it as like a stepping stone. Yeah, I do think it's absolutely fantastic.
I've never heard of that. Now I'm totally going to have to check it out on the Google, because what a neat idea to, and I like how you said that it can be a stair step to other things. You know, it's just kind of a group. And I love how you can find that supportive stuff online. I know some people have issues with internet and online and everything, but I think, gosh, it's so neat to be able to reach out and find a group of people with the same interests you have. And hopefully they're open to teaching you and you can teach them things. And what a just great source for a community if you don't have that community. 'Cause where I live, no one would know what I was talking about. But I can use the internet to find people who are like, yeah, you know, let me teach you, or let's practice, or let me tell you about this. And I think that that's one of those great things about the internet that I've seen during my lifetime. I've watched it evolve, and I think there's some good to it too.
Yeah, the internet certainly changed over the years. And again, I feel old for saying that, to be like, oh, back in my day, the internet wasn't this, you know, squeaky clean, yeah, and things like that. But it definitely has changed from the mid to late 2000s to what it is nowadays, I would say.
Oh, yeah. That's the one thing that, as much as I am not always a fan of how old I am, it is really neat if I think about I've watched it grow. I watched it get introduced, and then I have watched it transform. And it's a crazy ride to be on when you think, you know, when I was in school, we were learning typing on a keyboard. There was no computer. And then when I went to college, it's a cute story. I had a friend that went to a different college, and she and I were best friends in high school. And she one day called me and she was really mad. So I get this phone call from this girl yelling at me how just because we didn't go to the same college and just because we didn't see each other as much, she couldn't believe that I had dropped her as a friend and she thought we were close, and how dare I ignore her. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, because even then it's not like we carried cell phones around with us. You know, you called somebody's dorm room. That's how you got a hold of somebody. Apparently at her school, email was like really big deal. And so she had been emailing me once a day for like 2 months. I didn't even know I had an email address. So I had someone show me this, and I'm like, I don't even know. Like, I know what email is, but we didn't use it. No one used it the way that now. That's how we, you know, I'll just email you that. So I had a friend at school who showed me how to get on, and there were like 60 emails from this poor girl telling me every day just what she was trying to connect, and she was getting absolutely nothing back from me. And in my defense, it's because I didn't know. But that was my introduction to really how, you know, I knew what email was. I had used used it here and there, but I didn't realize that it was that important. And then, of course, there are also emails from like professors. And I'm like, oh, wow, I should probably use this thing because this is how they're going to communicate with us. But to see now where, again, I said to you, oh, send me the link on Twitter or you can email it to me. It's just that's common now, just how we do things. And to see that change over my lifetime, it's pretty cool. It's been a cool thing to see.
It's definitely a lot more streamlined now, especially in the realms of content creation. Because I remember growing up and, you did have your YouTubers and things like that, but it didn't seem as accessible. You could have your recordings from your phones, I guess, but even then, the phones that I used when I was younger weren't exactly made for videos or anything like that until probably my early teens, I want to say. But I actually remember I was out the other day going to work and there were a bunch of school kids walking by. They were walking to school and they all had their phones out. I kid you not, all of these are like massive smartphones, and that's just the way of things nowadays. But see, back when I was younger, I remember the big number pads and things like that.
Yes.
The Nokia. In fact, in a previous episode, I was talking to someone about the difference between maybe older people versus younger people keeping the phones on silent versus keeping them on the ringtone. And I remember I just hummed the Nokia theme instead of the Apple theme. And immediately, as soon as I did it, I was just like, right, nobody under a certain age is going to know what the hell I'm humming. They're going to be like, what is that sound? Are you just dropping a beat here or something? It's like, no, for the love of God, I'm not. But nothing makes you feel older. I mean, nowadays, it's just so easy to get access to the internet. And even with, for example, like a cheap phone or whatever, you can still get access to the internet. You can still create whatever you want, no matter whether it's high quality, low quality. And I suppose that brings it back to the fact that you and I, of course, we are podcasters. Spoilers, I know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I had to tell you this way, but yeah, we are.
Out of the bag now.
It is amazing how over the years, thanks to the change of the internet, it has become so easy to put yourself out there as both a creator and just as a person, really. Is it right in saying, and I had to research this just to double check in case I was wrong, but is it right to say that you started your podcast in 2021?
I will be 2 years in October.
Wow.
So yeah, I never thought that I would make it a year, let alone coming on 2 years, because it's just when you start, when you have that little baby idea and you listen to other people, people are good, and you have this equipment you don't totally know how to use and you have an idea in your mind, but you're listening to people and you're like, my goodness, that is like such good quality. I can hear everything. There's no background noise. They've got music. Oh my gosh, they have like sound effects and everything. And I thought I can never do that. That I'm a mom and I know what I want to talk about, but I will completely admit that I still am just baffled with Google Docs, how I can write something and someone can go in and edit it. Totally blows my mind. So you could imagine where I'm looking at this stuff going, well, it's this microphone. What do I do with all this stuff? So for me to be coming up, I mean, I've still got some months, but to hit a 2 year, I'm proud of myself. And I think I saw, aren't you coming to 3 years pretty soon?
Yeah, fingers crossed. In November, yeah, we'll be going to the 3 year mark, which is absolutely crazy to think about because out of curiosity, I ask this quite a lot to a lot of podcasters and content creators because a lot of their content usually, not always, but usually stemmed from the 2020s, the pandemic, the lockdown, the end times, as it were. But see for yourself, what was the inspiration behind your podcast? Was it because of the pandemic? Because I know technically by that point things were relatively simmering down. They were still around and everything. Lockdowns were still around and there was all the horribleness of those years. But did it stem from that or was it something you've always wanted to try out?
So I have 2 boys and my oldest, as I said, he'll be a junior and my youngest just turned 16. And I have been a full-time stay-at-home mom since my oldest was born. So I've been doing this mom thing for almost 21 years. Before that, I had a great job and I enjoyed. I was kind of a social worker in a way, but a little different. So then I had my son, and this is what I've done. I have been full mom, and I have built what I like to believe is this great relationship with my kids. It's been work. It's based on what I did before I kind of knew what I didn't want my relationship with my kids to be. But I will totally admit that I am full-time mom. And when my oldest was getting ready, it was around Christmas time, so his senior year, he was getting ready, he's going to be graduating, and he made the comment to my youngest son, that when I'm gone, she's going to be on you. She's going to have one kid in this house, and it's going to be you, and it's going to be all you all the time. And my youngest freaks out because he's like, I can't handle her sometimes the way she is now, let alone she not having to split, just my focus on two kids. So they decided that I should have a podcast and I should share all this advice that I feel the need to ram down their throats on a regular basis, because I do everything that they have going on. I'm like, well, because of what I used to do and the degrees I have, let me tell you what we should do about it, or let me help you figure out the next steps. You need to figure it out for yourself, but let me be there to support you when you do it. So they bought me my first set of podcasting equipment for Christmas, and that was a December present. I was scared to use it all. I had an iPad, then I had this very basic stuff. So my oldest goes away to college, and I would just sit around because my youngest he's just his own independent person, other than the fact that he cannot drive, which he would do if somebody was just stupid enough to let him do it without a license. My job is to drive him. And then, he's like, just drop me off, because he doesn't need any hand holding. That's just who he is. And I respect it totally. But I found myself sitting in parking lots going, I have nothing to do. And I do some volunteering and everything, but I also didn't want to ever have to not do my volunteering because I needed to be at a sporting event, because that I need to be for him and for me present for all the things that he does. So it was about October. I was like, you know what? I'm going to figure this out. And both of them helped me. They showed me how to set things up. And I started out with a very simple, and it's grown since then, but it really had nothing to do with the pandemic. It had to do with my kid realizing that he could not handle me sitting outside his school building all day waiting for him to come out because I was bored and lonely. So that is why everyone else gets to listen to me ramble.
Well, to be fair, it is a good trait of a podcaster to be able to ramble and talk for hours and,
Yeah.
get all your thoughts out there. There's no point in them being inside. You might as well just get all the thoughts out.
That's right. It's rambling around in there if I don't get it out. So yeah.
No, that is quite interesting though, because your podcast is very positive, I will say, and it is really nice to listen to. It is a lot of very interesting episodes that you put out, because I have to admit, I was listening to a couple before we came on, because I was like, I've got to do my due diligence before I go on. You talk about a wide range of topics, especially in general, like with life, with support, those kind of ones. I was listening to your first episode about fear, steps, and new things.
Oh no, you went back to the first. No one does. No.
Yes, I know. I did a first and last, to be fair. Apologies. One of my friends did that. He was like, "Oh, I'm listening to your podcast." And I was like, "Fantastic. Oh, thank you so much for the support." And they sent a screenshot, and it was episode 1. And I was like, "Oh, no. No, please. Just listen to any other one."
Listen to the newer ones, and then, realize that I actually have figured out how to edit. Then if you want to go back to the beginning and be like, wow, she's in a dining room, and that is pretty bad.
I mean, to be fair, when I first started out, I did it out in my living room during COVID, right beside the modem. I'm right beside the TV. I'm comfy with my life right now.
Yeah.
I'm comfy. I'm just going to do it here. I've had to move the operation upstairs, unfortunately, since then.
Well, I try to cover, and I always take listener questions or topics because, I don't know what people would like to hear me talk about. But I've discovered, I'm 46 years old, and in 46 years, you experience a lot and you see a lot and you realize what are maybe easier ways to do things. And, I have had some topics that I didn't expect to cover. People seem to enjoy those just as much as the ones where I'm like, this has been all organized and I know what I'm going to talk about. But I like having guests on because, well, I always say, it's from my perspective. This is advice from a 46-year-old mom, and it's going to be about who you should forgive and maybe if people don't deserve your forgiveness because, some people don't. But then I love having guests on because they have their own perspective and it might click with someone a little bit better than from my perspective. And I learned a lot because I've learned some things. I'm like, I had never thought of it that way. I never thought to approach something in life that way. I'll give it a try and see if it works.
It's always that first step, though, isn't it? Just trying to get over the threshold to be like, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm talking about. This is me putting myself out there, because I know for your particular topics, they are a lot more personal. For me, although I do talk about personal topics and things like that, it's mainly in the viewpoint of if I'm talking about a video game or a TV show, a movie, that kind of thing. So at least I can kind of hide behind that veneer and be like, oh yeah, haha, bad movie, yay. For legal reasons, this is a joke, but for you, you're putting your thoughts out there and you're doing a fantastic job, let me just say, of doing that.
Well, thank you.
But have you ever found any challenges of doing any episodes?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a couple. It's funny because I talk about what I used to do before I was Mama D. So I was like a social worker, but I worked with special treatment foster care kids. So they were kids who, for various reasons, could not be in with their biological parents, but for a whole host of other reasons, could not be in a typical foster home. They required medication. We dealt with a lot of mental illness, which sometimes one mental illness goes into another one. And so you needed special parents who had extra training, who realized that if you take this child, it's going to be an adventure. We're going to say it that way. You're going to have some property damage. You're going to be going to the police station. There's going to be a lot going on because these kids are scared and they're angry. And I dealt with teenagers, which are just a joy in general. And then you add the fact that you have taken them away from their biological family, not you, but someone has. And so they're mad and they feel abandoned and they don't trust anyone. So they're just a lot of fun to deal with. And so I've seen a lot in the years I did it. And I really said, I'm not going to talk about it on my podcast because they're not my stories to tell. What I experienced is my stories to tell, but I didn't really feel comfortable kind of opening that door. And then I was on a couple podcasts as a guest and they asked me to talk about it because I do have some hilarious stories. I loved it. I loved doing it. And sometimes I would go home more often crying than not, but then I have some memories that are just hilarious. And that's what they wanted me to talk about. And I enjoyed talking about it, but by doing so, it kind of opened up some memories that I had repressed because I just didn't want to deal with what I had seen. Of course, people always, what happened to those kids? And I don't know. And I don't want to know because I have a feeling I know and I can't face that because I did the best I could, but it wasn't enough. With what I could do, what I was allowed to do, it wasn't enough. And I don't know if it ever could have been enough, but I know most likely where they are. And it was a lot to deal with. So I've realized that by doing so, then I had another episode where I talked about an ex-boyfriend who has passed away and how we did not leave it on good terms when we broke up. And the whole point of those episodes were more of, just remember that, might not see someone again. And you don't have to walk away after an argument being like, oh, I forgive you, but you can walk away showing the person you do still care. And I wish we had done that because then he passed away. And so that brought up, so doing what I do bring up some feelings that maybe I didn't really want to deal with. But that's the whole point of the podcast, is that we have to work through things. And I always go into it saying, I'm not a medical professional, but I'm going to talk about it. And I hope that you talk about it too. And then if you need more help help, there's wonderful people out there that you can talk to who would be a good third party who can listen much, much better than I can because I don't do that anymore.
No, I think that is an absolutely great way of looking at it, because there's a very weird trend recently with podcasts where a lot of them want to be the voice of reason, in the sense that they want to be the ones that say, this is what you should think about this particular topic, or this is what you should think about this or that, when the whole format of it is very subjective. You know, there's a human behind the host, as it were, which I know sounds very silly, but it's one of these things though that a lot of people want to be almost like an authority figure of saying, this is how you should do things, or that's how you should do things. And for yours especially, and I hope for mine as well at times, that I personally like to offer opinions and views and things, because that's something I'm very self-conscious at when I say, oh, I like this particular thing, but I don't like that particular thing. But then I have to reel myself in and say, unless it's something very important for obvious reasons, but if it's something that, you know, someone's gonna like, but I don't like, I don't want to feel as if I'm demonizing or alienating anyone. And I feel as if yours does that perfectly as well. The fact that you are offering these stories, these ideas, this advice, and you do it in such a great way compared to someone yelling down the microphone being like, this is how you should feel, cheer up right now. And you're like,
Yeah.
no, maybe not the same, but
I appreciate that. No, because I think that we often forget that. I mean, you know, if you take a movie and like, you know, you right now, I was listening, you're doing about The Simpsons, and you can love The Simpsons or you can hate The Simpsons, but that doesn't mean I have to feel the same way. And I think we forget that sometimes, that these are my feelings and my opinions, and that's totally okay for me to feel this way. And you can totally feel the opposite way. And that doesn't mean that I don't like you or anything. And, you know, I'm doing, these are kind of the basic, I'm not talking about, like you said, the super important topics or anything, but we're allowed to feel differently. And I'm allowed to tell you how I feel. And then but I should also listen to how you feel, because gosh, the world would be pretty darn boring if we all felt the same way and we all like the same things. I kind of think it's neat. Like, I don't like certain TV shows. I don't like the show Seinfeld. And I realize I'm probably one of the very few people that doesn't like Seinfeld, but I don't like it. And that's okay. It's okay if you happen to like Seinfeld, because geez, that's why the show's on television. But it's okay to have differing opinions. And if I give advice and it doesn't really work for you, tweak it or throw it away. I mean, it's not going to hurt my feelings if you say, you know what? No, I disagree. Everybody should forgive everybody. Well, I don't agree with that. But if you do, then that's okay. Throw that piece of advice away. Maybe I'll say something later that, you know, appeals to you a little bit more. That's okay.
because that is the amazing thing about podcasts. The fact that you put your opinion out there, and I've even had that when I put out things on Twitter or something saying, oh, what do you think of this show? Or what do you think of this particular topic? And just being so surprised every time. It's like, you know, that shocked Pikachu face meme where it's just like
yeah.
the, what? People don't like this? But it is so fascinating to see that, and done in such a constructive way. Obviously, you've got the vocal minority who come in and they're a bit too passionate about it, but for the most part, it is interesting to see all these different opinions come together and say, I don't like that. And it's like, well, why don't you like it? Well, I don't like it because of XYZ. And you go, okay, that's actually a very good point. Or I like this because of another reason. And it's so constructive, yeah.
Well, I think, you know, you said how I share this like personal stuff and you don't, because you're kind of reviewing more games or movies or something. But I tell you, there are some passionate people out there about some of this stuff. So I think sometimes you're taking more of a risk than I am. I'm just sharing stories where people are very passionate about things that they enjoy. And that's great. Like, there's some shows that I'm like, oh no, that's the best show ever. You can't convince me otherwise. But some people are really passionate. And I think, goodness, it's hard then to put your opinion out there, because some people get very upset when you don't like something that they like. So you're a risk taker too. 'Cause, you know, I've heard stories
Oh,
So
absolutely. I mean, my co-host and friend Andrew and I reviewed a particular anime called Sword Art Online, and he is the most, and I brought this up in the episodes before, but he is the most mild-mannered person ever. He doesn't look for confrontation. Andrew, if you're listening to this, sorry for bringing you into this, but
we'll say hi, Andrew.
hey there. And he never goes out looking for a fight or anything, but I remember he called out a particular problematic part of that show because it's very much a starter anime for a lot of people, so a lot of people have a nostalgia around it, but at the end of the day, it's got very, very problematic moments, and we did a whole episode on it, but before that, the reason that inspired that particular episode was because he got attacked online by people defending these particular things. And the thing is, I am a fan of some very controversial game franchises and things like that. For example, Sonic the Hedgehog. I bet you weren't expecting that when I said controversial, because
Well, you were, because I was thinking I played Sonic the Hedgehog growing up. How is that controversial? That's fun. That's, the little rings and everything. That's a memory for me.
see, you would be surprised because the amount of people who are just so passionate saying, oh, Sonic was never good because a recent game might not do as well as past games. They compare it to a particular game called Sonic 06, where that was just an absolute dumpster fire. So they're like, because that game did terribly, then all the games are suddenly bad. And my friend and I actually did a whole month dedicated to Sonic, and we went through each quote-unquote age of the series. So we went through the retro age, so like the 16-bit on the Sega Genesis, or Mega Drive for the UK listeners out there. We did the Dark Age, where it was like all about Sonic Adventure in fact, Sonic Adventure did get its own episode, but we did from Sonic Heroes all the way to the one where they gave a hedgehog a gun and everything, and turned another one into a werewolf. Then we did the Modern Age, which seemed to be the kind of safest stage of them all. And it was interesting to see this progression about a series that was just held in such high esteem to one that kind of middled and it got rocky in the middle, and then you had another age where it's just like, oh, it's okay. People didn't like it. They did think, oh, it's amazing, but neither did they think, oh, this is the worst thing ever. It was just completely in between. And it's interesting to, when you put out your opinion, and a lot of people are saying, oh, I think this, I think that. And fortunately for now, we've never been attacked for our opinions on these certain games. But yeah, it's interesting to see. I always joke about that if someone is going to hate listen to the podcast. And I'm like, whatever you do not share the link with your friends. Do not get those listener numbers up. Please, no, how awful.
Don't do that.
Yeah, oh no, how awful.
It's funny, I belong to on Twitter, there's, of course, groups of us that kind of support each other. There's one that I belong to that's really great. It's all women. And so we just kind of help each other out. But there was one podcast that they decided that they were going to review the series Supernatural, which is a great series. I watched, enjoyed it. A lot of people did. And they were like, yeah, we'll just watch the episodes and we'll talk about it. Very simple idea. Oh my goodness. They come in and tell us that they got this hate mail or this because they didn't take something serious or they lessened something. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I have sometimes thought, oh, I should watch a show and review it on, my podcast. That'll be fun. Oh no, I have no desire to do that now because I didn't realize that people got so passionate. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It is a bad thing if you send hate mail to somebody like that. There's other ways to express ourselves than telling somebody some really mean. I mean, it's some pretty mean stuff. And I think how you don't really get your point across. Like I always say, if you come at me to tell me something and you immediately start putting me down, calling me stupid, calling me names, you could have the best point in the world, but I have completely tuned you out and now I don't like you. So whatever you wanted to tell me, it could have been completely accurate and I might have actually changed my opinion about something, but because you entered the ring yelling at me, you have no chance. So there's ways to explain yourself that I'd be like, you kind of said, sometimes people say something like, I hadn't thought of it. That's a good point. Will it change my mind? Maybe, maybe not. But I will tell you, if you walk in the room calling me the B name, I'm not going to listen to you. And now I'm mad. And that's not how we should express ourselves. But apparently with the show Supernatural, it's a pretty passionate show. and people got heated.
Oh, I've heard that before. I mean, there was also, I think, was it Sherlock and Doctor Who? They were all the one fandom at one point. Yeah, people, especially for sci-fi, that's something I've noticed. They get very, very passionate, especially with Star Wars, Star Trek, anything with Star in
Hmm.
it. The thing is, this is something I've always said, that you're allowed, obviously, you don't have to take my word for this, you're allowed to like what you like, but that doesn't mean that it's free from any criticism, or rather critique,
Right.
because I feel as if a lot of people take the word critique and twist it in a way that is more just vitriol. They just spew very nasty things, especially if you look at Star Wars. There's a lot to dislike about, for example, the new Star Wars, but when you get people saying, yeah, it's because of that reason or this reason, you're like, whoa, 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 hold on. It's a film about space knights running around in robes, swinging laser swords here. It's not some kind of geopolitical statement here where you're like, ladies and gentlemen, today I'm here to tell you my 10-hour discussion about why the sequel trilogy is terrible. I don't have nearly enough hours in the day to sit here and listen to like a 10-hour thing of why somebody hates the sequels. At the end of the day, we're allowed to like what we like. If we like that, fair enough. If you don't like it, that's fine. And we're all entitled to our opinion. But when you get people on both ends that are saying, this is the best thing ever, this is the best thing since sliced bread, or, you know, you've got the other people on the other side saying, this is the worst thing since unsliced bread, you gotta come to a compromise there.
Well, I just kind of think, you know what? You watch what you want. You know, I mean, like my husband, he'll be like, are you watching true crime again? And I'm like, yes, Dateline's on. And he's like, it's interesting, but how can you just watch it? And I said, well, for me, most of the time, I like just to have noise, whatever I'm doing. So I'll turn the television on, but that doesn't mean I'm really paying attention to it. I just like noise when I'm doing stuff. But, you know, I've said to him, if you don't like it, that's okay. I'm allowed to like something. I don't have to justify it. I can just say, for whatever reason, I like it. You know, he's rewatching Magnum PI from the first ones. I can't do it. I've tried, but I'm like, you know what? If that's what you want to watch, you go watch that. That's okay. It's okay. And, you know, if you want to talk about Magnum PI, I can tell you why I'm just not a fan. And you can tell me why you're a fan. In the end, we'll both go into our separate areas and I'm going to watch Dateline and you're going to watch Magnum PI. It's okay. We don't all have to agree. And it's nice to be able to talk about things too.
So what you're saying is your next episode's going to be on Magnum PI then?
You know what? That's what I could, but you know what? People would probably come out of the woodwork to explain to me why. I'd have like this whole fan base saying why it's the best show ever. And I'd be like, I don't want to have a passionate discussion about Magnum PI. I can have that downstairs if I want to. I could just ask my husband.
I know you're going to get all the people cosplaying this Columbo just coming out the woodwork being like, just one more thing here. One more thing. It's like, no, I don't want to talk about Magnum PI.
But I do have a lot of other episodes you can go back and listen to. Please.
Oh no, how awful. Please don't listen to our podcast, especially Petals of Support. Please don't.
That's right. Don't raise my numbers. That makes me sad.
Raising my numbers makes baby Jesus sad. Please don't. On that note, Mamadi, thank you so much for coming on tonight and discussing your podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you tonight.
I have enjoyed it, and I really hope I am taking a guest break right now. I call my guest episode sleepovers. And just because, as you know, guests, it's a little bit more work when it comes to editing and everything. So over the summer, I'm taking a break, but I will be back with guest episodes once the fall hits. I'm doing solos now. So once the fall hits, I hope that you would consider coming on my podcast and sharing some advice and just chit-chatting about whatever you'd like to talk about.
Honestly, I would be delighted to.
Yay! Oh, that would be wonderful. We usually have people on that give some advice, but we have talked. I've had some fun. I love having guests on. So we will work something out and hopefully we'll have to do this time because it works for both of us. We will deal with the time zones.
Absolutely.
I would love to have you on. So thank you.
No, and thank you for coming on. But before we wrap up and, of course, finish, where can these lovely listeners at home find your content?
Oh, I'd love, if anyone is interested, I am on all listening platforms. It's Petals of Support. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Petals of Support. Support. I have a TikTok. It's nothing exciting. I just replay clips because of the anonymous thing. And you can also email me if you have any topics or if you have any questions. It's petals.s@aol.com.
And if you want to listen to more Satsunami episodes and or hate listen, if you want, not going to force you, you can check out our website, podpage.com/Chatsunami, as well as any good podcast apps. Just look for the red panda under the name Chatsunami and we'll see you there. I also want to give a huge shout out to our Pandalorian patrons tonight, Robotic Battle Toaster and Sonia. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. But if you want to check out our content on Patreon, where you can get exclusive episodes and early access, you can check it out at patreon.com/Chatsunami. But until then, thank you all so much for listening. Stay safe, stay awesome, and most importantly, stay hydrated. Welcome to Satsunami, a variety podcast that discusses topics from gaming and films to anime and general interests.
Previously on Satsunami, we've analysed what makes a good horror game, conducted a retrospective on Pierce Brosnan's run as James Bond, and listened to us take deep dives into both the Sonic and Halo franchises.
Also, if you're an anime fan, then don't forget to check us out on our sub-series, Chatsunani, where we dive into the world of anime. So far, we've reviewed things like Death Note, Princess Mononoke, and the hit Beyblade series.
If that's sounds like your cup of tea, then you can check us out on Spotify, iTunes, and all good podcast apps.
As always, stay safe,
stay awesome, and most importantly,
stay hydrated.
Hello, dear listeners. Mama D here, ready to share my wisdom and offer a listening ear. Life can be tough, but remember, you're never alone. On Petals of Support, I'll be your virtual mom, providing guidance and support when you need it most. Join me each week as we explore topics close to your heart, from self-care and personal growth to parenting and finding inner peace. We'll embrace every aspect of life's journey together. Let my voice wrap around you like a warm hug, reminding you that you are capable, loved, and cherished. Remember, my dear petals, you are stronger than you know. Together, we'll navigate life's garden, one bloom at a time. I'm Mama D, and this is Petals of Support. Let's grow, learn, and flourish together.
This episode is sponsored by Zencastr. If you're a podcaster that records remotely like me, then you'll know how challenging it can be to create the podcast you've always wanted. That's where Zencastr comes in. Before I met Zencastr, I was but a naive podcaster, recording on low-quality, one-track audio waves. But with Zencastr, you can kiss those fears goodbye as they provide crystal clear audio and HD video. Plus, with our all-in-one podcasting suite, recording with guests is extremely simple. From local recordings to post-production, Zencastr has it all. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code CHATSUNAMI. You'll get 30% off your first 3 months of Zencastr Professional. I want you to have the same easy experience I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.